Welcome to the TMRN Time Monk Radio Network. I'm Gemini, and today is Friday, the 14th of October, 2011. Joining me this evening as co-host is Uranus Rising.
Hello, everyone. Good evening.
We have a wonderful evening planned with Paul Muir, a physical, astral, and etheric healer, joining us from Wales. Paul has spent decades researching orbs, solar and galactic energy, remote healing through direct energy, string theory, as well as human, animal, and plant energy. Paul has written a book titled Orbs, Energy, and Myths, The Secret of the Ancients. Paul's work is available on iTunes and YouTube. How are you this evening, Paul?
Very well, thank you. Great. Lovely to be on you.
We're pleased to have you join us. The Time Monka radio administrator and producer of the show is Fox, and he will be doing the recording and technical support of the show. Several members of the WebBot Forum were kind enough to join us this evening. Please welcome members Neil, Peace for Gaia, and Periwinkle. The interview will be available for free on Time Monk Radio's YouTube channel and at the website webbotforum.com. Paul, are you comfortable and ready for the interview, sir?
Yes, I am. Yes. Thank you very much.
And tonight we will begin with Peace for Gaia.
Hi, Neil. I have a few introductory questions to ask since people may not be as familiar with your work as some of the other people we've interviewed. The first question is, what is an orb energy, and how did you end up researching these phenomena? And was there a specific event in your life that inspired you to start this research?
I'll start with the second part of that question. It's probably the easier one. And I suppose I better wind the clock back a little bit of time. I was very successful as a young man. I went into industry fairly young, and I got to the top in management, and that was project management and design. By the age of 26, I set up my own interior contracting design company. And that took me through to the 90s. And during that time when I owned and ran those couple of companies, I'd worked for Walt Disney Corporation and many other corporates. I did a JCT design build project for the European costume centers. So what I had, or what the training that I had, was one of detail, watching and the design process, but there were disciplines of surveying and observation that I brought to project management. So these skills I brought to the research. So I'm just giving you a little bit of background. During the time of running that business, in the early 90s, I had 2 or 3 near-death experiences. They were very interesting. They were life-changing. I mean, it's very difficult. And I witnessed a couple of things that I found to be true later on. And I thought, to hell with business. I closed the one business, and obviously because I was ill, I just had to close it down, pay up whatever money I had. And the photocopying arm that I had, which was another franchise, I gave to a colleague, and that ran for a few years. Then I handed over that business. But I was only interested really in those events. And I think after those events, I could just feel and hear energy. I didn't understand what it was, but that was the sort of point that in my life that took me on this path. So I don't know whether that answers the question, but it was that was the path that inspired it. I started surveying what people would call the divine matrix or the cosmic tree or whatever. And obviously, because I was in business, I'd never looked at anything like this. I never read any mythologies. I'd only been in business. I'd been working 12 hours a day or 14 hours a day. So it was like as though I came to science with all the science disciplines, but without any of the baggage of understanding anything. In fact, I would say that I was a novice to science. And I think that was a great benefit because nothing was clouding the water. I mean, I could see things, and I would look at them basically in the search for truth. And so I started surveying the sites, and I translated those into AutoCAD, which is one of the computer packages I used to use in the designing process. And I discovered the paired split field that probably nobody in the world knows about, or I don't know, that may sound a bit arrogant, and that led me to finding paired split stones, and and the flush mounted ones on the surface of the earth, which any of the ancient archaeologists would know nothing about. So that was the event. I studied the actual actions of the fields where the megalithic stones were standing. I then began to understand the tiny little notches, slots, triangular cutouts on the bottom of the stones, or angular points. And I realized that the stones were standing on energy fields. This was common knowledge to most megalithic researchers, or certainly not the archaeologists, but I understood how the field worked, or at least parts of it. I couldn't say that, I could build a stone circle, because they would be very difficult unless you understood this cosmic tree, this divine matrix totally. So that was the sort of fundamentals to looking at this. And there's some very interesting stories about some of the stones that I found, Wales's largest stone row and things like that. So there is evidence that I can demonstrate the understanding of the paired split field. So what I wanted to do, the stones, some of the stones were tilted like they were pointing at stars. So I just wanted to see whether if there was any other sort of reaction between the fields of energy that the standing stones were standing on, and whether there was any energy reaction with the megalithic standing stones. And of course, it didn't take us long to we started filming above the tips of the stones, and to be honest, it didn't take us long to capture these stones outputting energy. In one of the 50 sequenced photographic session we took, the megaliths had an aura over them. We could also, in the two flashes of the camera, so you get a pre-flash and then a secondary flash. The pre-flash sets the focal length. Now, these were taken at night. We could see the bars firing out of the tips of the stones. When we after the halfway through this process, we were obviously kept on reviewing the photographs. I asked John, who's with me here today, to put his hand on the top of the stone, and or put his hand over the stone, and his hand was glowing. There was an aura around his hand. There was an aura around the top of the stone. Then I asked him to touch it because I was doing sitting on the floor photographing these things, the bars, and the aura around the stones. And as he touched the stone, the whole process stopped. So the picture came back into focus, and it was as though he was earthing the energy that was present around the stones. So one thing that, again, why I became interested in the web boss, and there was a number of things that Cliff was talking about, was that the stones coming back to life, or the living stones. And I often wondered when in hearing some of his work, whether he was referring to ancient megaliths bursting with magnetic auras, and so they would be coming back to life. So there's still, and we repeated touching the stone, taking our hands off, touching the stone, taking our hands off, and the effect switched on and off. So anyone who's saying, well, it's flashback, they couldn't explain. I've taken this to camera specialists. They couldn't explain why the photograph, when we are touching the stone, is crystal clear, and when we take it off, there's an aura over it, and it looks like flashback, but of course it isn't. It's flashback off magnetic field. So we pretty quickly got an understanding that the megaliths, the bars, and the orbs were all linked. And over time, we understood this energy as probably the energy of creation is the best thing that I could say. It's a very difficult one, because you could, if you were saying string theory, well, that's the energy of creation. They're looking for the Higgs boson. So you could just say, well, it's the energy of creation, and I think that is probably my simplest answer to it.
Oh, wow, that's quite a story. So the next question was, is this the same or similar energy as like chi or prana, mana, sacred breath? But from your explanation, I'm wondering, maybe it is similar, but those words seem to apply to human etheric energy manifestations rather than, I think what you're describing and interacting with are energies of the earth itself.
Yeah, and well, you see, what we did is we generated a number of theories. And any new science you've got to try and create a theoretical model to back up your observations. Otherwise, it's a piece of science. We've observed this, but we don't understand what we're seeing. So what we did is we created a number of theoretical models to back this up. So I'm a little bit lost then. Where was I at? The theoretical models was I on about?
Well, we were just wondering if it's the same energy as, people refer to as chi and prana. Those are more human originating, from human body.
I would say that yes, it is, but there are many aspects to this energy, but it's the unseen forces. Does that make sense? Like the sea of energy that we live in. Let's take one of the predictions. We predicted that this would be in space. We predicted that stone spheres would fall from the sky on planets with magnetic fields that have volcanic activity. So it's a bit like trying to describe every piece of life on the Earth by saying, well, we know what an earthworm does, or we know what one plant does. So this orb bar wave is, well, let's see if I can describe it. The orb bar wave carries the message of creation. Does that make any sense?
It does. Sort of like.
So then let's say that the soul returns back to its source, back to the light. It will travel in the sphere into the tunnel with the rings round it, which is the wave and bar, and travels back to the source of the creator. Does that make sense? So yes, it is the soul, but it is also the stuff that makes matter.
Yeah, it's paradox.
Sorry?
I just said it's almost a paradox, like a wave and a particle at the same
That's
time.
it. So that basically, if you then take string theory, there are messenger particles that deliver their message through charge. Now, to me, that's consciousness. And so these are particles of charge delivering their messages. Now, let's say that some of the orb energy attaches to plants in the spring and gives a signal for germination. Then that quite simply is just one of the Hopi gods, one of their kachinas of the god of planting or the life bringer. If you take the Sumerian tutus, they also have the gods of planting. So we can say, well, orbs, healing. So we say, well, they're the orbs of healing. So you say, well, how can you make that conclusion? That's so far-fetched. And then you take photographs of a colleague who helped us with the research in the very early days. He classes himself as a cosmic shaman. I worked with him just after those near-death experiences, along with a gentleman called Alex Ancilio. His grandfather was a Maori chief. And the trouble is, it does, because of the questions, you're trying to answer, well, what is an orb? And it's not that simple. It's a bit like saying, well, describe all life on the planet. And you go, well, where am I going to start? There's one thing for certain, chemicals in a pond didn't start life. And that's for certain. I have seen these orbs dividing. In the early days, when we started out on the research, we were working with a biochemist, and we showed her some of our research. And she'd obviously been familiar looking down the microscopes. She said, "You've got viruses dividing on your digital video." And I said to her, "Are you joking?" And she said, No. She said, that I've seen this down the microscope time and time again. And of course, over time, we find rock art of cell division, the fibroblast process. Now this is Bronze Age, 4,500 years. So everywhere we were looking, we just got our answers back. Yes, this is the life force. This is the energy of creation. If you look at the primordial substance, the Hermetica, they were describing the primordial energy and its transmutations. So I understand the transmutations because the research that we did was as disciplined as I could make it. So I could say to you, well, an orb converts to a bar. That is one of its transmutations. But that will mean nothing to you, will it?
Right.
So it is a difficult one, and I probably trying to check out too much or trying to make too many links. And it is, after all, this thing has been lost for 4,500 years. It's not going to be. It wasn't easy for me in the past 20 years to come to these conclusions. So I don't know whether I answered anything there, lost my train of thought or whatever,
That's okay. No, I think you did. Yeah, so some of these questions, it is difficult to put it into a simple question.
Yeah.
You did already touch on this. The next question was, what impact do you see the rediscovery of this energy having on science and the healing arts in particular, which is yet again a huge question.
Yeah. Well, I'll try and work with some of the science first, because I think that's there is right and wrong science. Science is based on the 3% mass that we can observe, the massless, which makes up the Orb bar wave process, and many others, is the unseen stuff. So I always tend to try and put an analogy of, imagine a 100-page book, and I give you 3 pages, and I ask you to write an essay on that book. So what we know about science, there's going to be a majority of it that's going to be wrong, to be honest, even though we're using equipment which is matter-based to test for stuff that doesn't have a mass. So it's the massless stuff. I mean, science calls it dark matter, dark energy. Probably life force would be a better, the creative force would be a better idea of it. So what I would say is that the Big Bang Theory will collapse. It's slowly collapsing already. There is a thing called the Hawking's paradox, which is already suggesting that black holes don't exist, or that if they do exist, they counteract each other so that they disappear, and there's no mechanism for them appearing. There is some work by a gentleman called Halton Chippart, and he's been working on redshift since the 80s now. And what he discovered is that Hubble's law of redshift is not correct if what he's been observing from the quasars is correct. So that if redshift is wrong, then the Big Bang is wrong. He had his telescope time taken off him. And for anyone looking to reference Chip Arp's work, they can go to a program called The Universe, the Cosmological Quest, part 1, and you will see images of what I believe the Sumerians were writing about. So really what we've got is we've got Chip Art's work on redshift and how he believes that quasars are formed from the center of spiraling galaxies and not a single Big Bang. So they can form from many spiral galaxies. So that Big Bang theory will disappear, and that will disappear fairly shortly. Another one of the predictions that we had is that there will not be a constant speed to light. If the Orb bar wave carries light, so it's a photon and a wave, and what we've observed the Orb bar wave doing when it hits magnetic fields, then light will not have a constant speed. So basically, this blows apart all of science. Now, one of the predictions was, and this, I mean, I probably will be overfilling the conversation again, but it relates to a megalithic site called Nantara. And what we were predicting is that particles can move quicker than the speed of light. And only this week in the particle accelerator in CERN have they discovered neutrinos that travel, I think, about 20 times the speed of light. So science is on the edge of collapsing, but it depends on how much the powers that were, I suppose, Cliff's want to hold on to this modern day mythology, which is basically wrong, and it will be proved wrong by the observation, how much telescope time they take off these people who find out these things, how much science they crush because it doesn't fit their theories. Depends on how strong their will is, you know. And there was an interesting one with I don't know whether you heard of it. It's gravitational lensing. Now that is an effect we've recorded on camera, but it's not a gravitational lensing. It's a magnetic reflection. So you see two stars in space, and what they say is the light coming from those stars get warped by a planet with a gravity field, and then you get two stars appearing in your telescope. Unfortunately, they've observed the stars in pairs. They know that there aren't two there because of the signatures. But they can't find the planet or the gravity field. So quite simply, what is happening is that, you know, this is one of the things that I wrote about in the book, is a magnetic, although I probably didn't coin this phrase, is a magnetic reflection or reflection off a field of energy. So if you imagine staring at the moon through a double glazing, I don't know, do you have that in America? Do you have that? If you stare through, sorry, yeah, you're familiar with it. If you stare at the moon, you'll get multiple images, but there's only one moon there. And so what it's hitting is a field of glass, you know, being the light reflection is slowed down by hitting this field of energy. Refraction or occurs so that you get a multiple image. And all that is happening with this double lens effect, or double gravitational lensing is what they call it, is that it's magnetic reflection of energy fields in space. So that is these things, because you've been studying the camera and how the camera works and the orbs and the energy, you get pictures. Another thing that I found fascinating is the constant speed of gravity. There was a Lockheed engineer, and he was experimenting with magnets. He had 4 magnets with holes drilled in them, and he bolted 2 of them together with their attracting forces, so they're just locked in together. He put the bolt through them, bolted them together. He then took the 2 of exactly the same 4 magnets, and he turned them round so that the repelling forces were against each other, and bolted them together. He encased them in concrete so nobody knew which ones were which, and he dropped them from the top of a building. The one with the repelling forces hit the floor after the one who had the attracting forces. Now that defies the laws of gravity. So the law of gravity is wrong. But of course they stop any of this research because there's no explanation to it. And I got an interesting I'll refer back to that gravity experiment later in the conversation. So does that give you the science side of things?
Yes, I was aware of the CERN faster than light particle story.
Yeah.
I've long been anti-Big Bang, so I just think the truths are coming out, and there's not going to be anything they can do to stop it.
No.
So they can.
Well, the other one that I haven't mentioned is that fractals appear in space. They appear in pulsars. There's fractal geometry from the spacing of pulsing stars, and there are fractals in nature. We know that. We see them. You can look at the trees. You can see the branches. You can, the Mandelbrot set. So these fractals appear in mathematics, in observation, in observation of the very large in space. And if you would take this fractal mathematics, you got rid of the c from the constant speed of light and the gravity effects, you would probably find that string theory could grow up in real terms or grow out of the quantum. And once you have string theory out of the quantum, you have opening and closing strings. And the opening and closing strings are what we've observed. So string theory to me is not quantum. There will be needs for adjustment to that string theory. And that's by some of the faulty theory that needs to be got rid of. And then we will have the serpents in the sky and the cosmic serpent that created everything. And do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's very interesting. Okay, the next question is from forum member Jules. Paul, orbs seem to be everywhere. Since writing your book, can you speculate on what their purpose is or what they are? Some think they are spirits of the dead or at least fragments of their consciousness, and others say they are glitches in the matrix where life's standing waves of energy or resonance meet. What do you think orbs are, and what is their purpose?
Right. There are multiple functions of this energy. I will be missing parts, because what you're seeing is an orb, which is the single sphere which maintains that shape. So you need to understand that is constantly transforming from delivering its energy in a saturation of energy. It's giving up its energy through strands. So the functions, if I had to put them into categories, I would say that there are planetary orbs or planetary gobs that form matter, or matter forms on them. There are soul-based orbs which carry the soul even in the dream time out of the body. And I had some very interesting photographs which I don't show because of particular reasons, of a schizophrenic when linked spheres were pouring out of her. And it was an interesting series of photographs. Of course, I knew, you see, I believe that an individual can be spiritually possessed. And I believe that these spheres of consciousness that the Buddha talked about can actually move into people and basically enter into their frequency and their field. So that there's a lot of things going on here. They give energy to plants that are growing. They create matter. You know, so that there's not one simple answer. So there is many aspects to the orb and the energy and its transmutations that is basically saying that these are creative forces, and there is, I believe that the human soul consciousness is a separate issue. We didn't really spend a lot of time studying the orb consciousness or the soul consciousness. We just take that as a thing on faith, I suppose. Is that any good?
Yes, thank you. Gemini is gonna jump in here now.
Thank you, Peace for Gaia. Up next, we have Uranus rising.
Hi, Paul. Lovely to
Hiya.
speak with you again. I feel like we're neighbors, you in Wales and me
That's
in
right.
Scotland.
Yeah. Well, my ancestry is from there anyway, so it's the
Right.
Muir, the people of
Yes.
Muir. Yeah, yeah,
Yes. It's great.
yeah,
In your book, you write about and provide a lot of photographic examples of orbs, waves, and bars. Would you speak a little bit more? I know you've touched on it, but would you speak a little bit more about how you captured them on camera and the
yeah.
video recordings?
Right. Well, this is. I think we didn't have a set procedure of. We didn't know what we were going to expect. We didn't know what we would make of it. We just entered this thing just doing using what I considered to be a best method. So I started with taking photographs. Probably in the early digital days, I think it was a 1.3 megapixel camera with a 16 megabyte hard drive on it, so that they wouldn't hold that many photographs. And then I progressed into 3.1 Canon and 3.2 Canons.
Mm-hmm.
And what we would do is I would be taking on a probably a 128 megabyte card. So we would be taking probably about 250 photographs an evening, and we started to develop different techniques to try and gain better ideas of what was really happening. In about 2005, John joined me and joined the research, and we were then working off much larger hard drives or SD cards in the cameras, and we would probably take about 500 photographs a night, maybe more, maybe 750, depending on whether we were taking out the second cameras. So what we did is we were all this time we were categorizing the orbs. So we took them in snow, rain, hail, lightning, summer,
amazing.
winter, autumn. We took them by power stations. We in one of the talks we were actually invited to go to a nuclear power station, but there were a number of people there at the time, and we didn't. It's when you get so many questions about these things, we didn't follow that up because Hinckley's just away, not far away from us. So we were looking at the effects of nuclear power on these orbs, and of course there is a lot of orbs are seen over nuclear power stations and mistaken for UFOs stealing energy from the power station and manufacturing their warp drives or whatever. But that is not the case. You know what I mean? I mean, I don't.
Yes, I do.
I did like Star Trek when I was a kid, and but I'm 50 now, and I've grown out of that. So anyway, so going back to the technique, so what we would do then is flash in digital cameras. You'd have like a preview at the back of the camera. You take a photo, you look at it, and so what we started to do then, once we'd taken in every single condition, and of course in lightning we got that one great image of the two orbs attached to the pine tree, and it was just like wow. We had the we had the hawthorn ones in the spring, and we had those. See the hawthorn ones in the spring where the orb is attached to a point on the hawthorn branches, and it breaks down. It looks like the burning bush, because you've got this red and colors coming out of it. So it's delivering its energy, and because it's delivering its energy, it's slowed down. So let's just, if we just take the technique that we were developing at that time, is we'd flash a photograph, see an orb, hold the camera at that point, flash again, and flash again. And so what happened is slowly the stages of what that energy was doing unveiled itself to us. Wow. So you had its transformation right, from one
Yes.
stage to another. And basically, the orb would come on a plant, it would deliver energy in. Like when I was giving the talks in 2004, I was going, well, we think it's this, but we're not sure. Well, now we're
Yes.
sure.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that
Yes. Yeah.
once you've taken enough of them, and then I've observable heavenly planets. Right, so that's one of the quotes from his research. So in one sense, both powerful gods of light and darkness are seen as serpents. He's just saying that they deliver positive, negative energy. This may have some connection to the linking of the snake to the moon in the mythological areas. So basically, what I'm saying is that as the wave coming into the serpent, that's towing, that takes an egg into its mouth, which is the start of the wave, and pushes it out. Does it push it out of its mouth? Takes it into its tail, pushes it out of its mouth. So as the wave comes into the Earth's magnetic field, the wave breaks down, the orb is dropped, it fuses. Basically, the electrical charge rips up parts of the Earth and fuses to the hollow moon.
Okay. Yeah.
So that is the process. It's part of the Fulgurite theory. It's just that the wave is hitting a magnetic field. It is dropping its orb, which is inside the wave. If you took many photographs of orbs, you'll get the waves and you'll get the orbs inside them. Every researcher who's ever taken them, even if they all believe they're angels, still get those waves. Inside them, and they will still get them falling out the ends or breaking up. So they get a link bar, and some of them won't be linked. So the cosmic serpent now has come across the universe, maybe from the center, the sky pivot, or a point of energy, and it's traveling across as a wave. It hits a magnetic field, so and one of the orbs break off. So this is why you get multiple planets or multiple orbs, and they all fuse at the different magnetic waves that the Earth emits out. So let's say I'm just having power fluctuations, and that happens when I work with energy as well. So it's just
that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. So I do. So I get power fluctuations. In fact, I'm diverting the conversation.
It's a good demonstration.
Yeah, when I was dying, right, and I was recovering, coming back after those near-death experiences, I was working with Steve, as I said, and Alex, who was his grandfather was a Maori chief. And he used to be able to switch his computer screen on and off with his hands, and he'd drag it across, and you could see the charge going across the screen. But they were funny. They were really strange people. So it was very difficult with it because the energy was just so intense. Just very difficult.
Well,
so anyway,
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. So I don't know whether I answered that or not, but
I think you did. I think you did, Paul. And at least I have a clear idea in my mind of what you're saying. So, you also described in your book that energy opens and closes and moves in multiples of 3 and 6s, and that this is the energy of the ancient oracle of the I Ching. What did you mean by that?
Well, do you know of the divination tool, the I Ching?
Yes.
You know the shape-changing dragon that it's classed as?
Yeah.
Well, let me qualify. I want to qualify some things. This part of the research needs to be revisited with state-of-the-art, 80 grand digital equipment. It really needs to be revisited, because what I've seen, I've repeated parts of it with high definition equipment now. I still haven't got the horizontal division. But basically what these bars do is they travel in 3s and 6s. for a start off. So that gives the I Ching digital numbers, 3 bars.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
The orbs convert into bars. These bars attach to other bars. And so this is the part that I would say that the I Ching is a real energy.
Yeah.
I think it's the formulation on the field, and the geometry of what I've studied on the field suggests that it's formed on the field. But 20 years research is still early days.
Yeah. Well, just what you said is pretty darn powerful. Pretty darn powerful.
Well, yeah. But to be honest, I remember one day when I was working on the field, and I'd never heard of a thing called a ley line. I mean, I was a businessman. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, maybe not as good as a good businessman, but I was too kind, really, I suppose. Yeah. And I stood there when I found these tiny little paired split stones, and I had access. I did the research in a megalithic site called Tinkins Wood. And I got to know the farmer, and he allowed me over all his land. And I followed these fields, and I found these tiny little D-nose stones, which were probably about 2 inches long and 1 inch high.
Yeah.
And I found them on the edges of these fields, and I brought the farmer to me, and I said, look, these are old stones. These are Bronze Age or pre-Bronze Age. And he said, nah, they're not. And he kicked them, and they would not move. They were solid. It was a bit like the iceberg, and either side. And so I worked on the field on all and I ended up finding stone after stone that's buried or paired split. And I've used this technique to find 8-inch square blocks of quartz buried on the paired split fields.
Yeah. Are these the Mary and Joseph lines that run through Wales?
You see, most of this has not been read, so I wouldn't know what they were. I mean, I know that there's massive ley lines, energy fields that run through Thornborough Henges that tie into Easter Island.
Yeah.
So and there's the world Greater field, and that world field is regulated by that point of energy.
Yes.
That creates the expansion and contraction. So I don't even know that there is a thing called crustal shift.
Yeah.
I'm not, to be honest, I think a lot of things. And there's one other theory I'd like to talk about, which is the magnetic cooling as well. But perhaps we'll do that. There is a later question, I think, that will.
Yeah.
Because that's an interesting question, interesting theory.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much. And I'm going to hand you over to Periwinkle now. Thank you, Paul.
Yeah.
Hi, Paul. I'm very interested to know if the energy of the orbs and bars is similar to that which Wilhelm Reich called orgone. Do you know about Wilhelm Reich?
Yes. It's probably is the same thing. I've had a brief look at it, and it probably we're just using the different names. It may be different aspects that he's looking at that I haven't covered, or I may have covered some of the things that he's covered, and I call it a different thing. But I would say that yes, because it was somewhat an unseen energy, wasn't it? Wilhelm Reich.
Well, he had a working theory. He changed weather with it, and he discovered a negative aspect of it that he called door. Are you familiar with that?
No, negative and positive. I know about charge of negative and positive. Many people. This is a difficult one. Many people don't see the universe in harmony. I see the universe as working harmoniously. So if it is negative, it's only because that energy may be energy can't be negative in the human sense, because all it is energy that creates harmony.
I didn't mean to have a negative connotation. I just meant an adverse.
Oh yeah. There's something that we researched, right, that we couldn't quite capture properly, which is the black orbs. So rather than reflecting white lights, they reflect black. So what that is could be the same as the one force and the other force, the yin and yang. Does that make any sense? I don't know. We did, because we couldn't capture it. We only captured it in daylight. You see, some of the daylight photographs we had black orbs. So, and black bars. So it was like as though it was absorbing light. So I would suggest that there is a positive and a negative to these things in terms of that. Is that what you meant? And I would say that I think we're probably talking about the same thing. As for the weather modification, I think that yes, that can be done by altering the field. Does that answer the question?
Oh yes, I think you did a wonderful job.
Yeah.
So many people are coming at this from different directions, but yes, there's negative and positive aspects. That's what I wanted to know.
Yeah.
I would like to ask a question for Green Meadow. Have you been able to increase your ability to see or feel orb energy over time?
Right. I've been able to understand it better.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So that let's say, right, the Italian earthquake, there was on the European plate, or whatever you want to call it. Again, I'm using language that I may not even believe in, but it's the only language that anyone can understand. So there was a Italian earthquake about 2 or 3 years ago. And I woke up out of bed and I was feeling sick. I wanted to vomit. And I knew that there was an earthquake happening. So I had chest palpitations as well, because it was affecting my heart rate. And a day later, I rang my mother, because I know she's electromagnetically sensitive. And I said to her at 2:39 on Wednesday, I think it was Wednesday or Tuesday, at 2:39 at night on Wednesday or Tuesday, whatever it was, did you have chest palpitations? She said, yes. How did you know? And I said, well, you were picking up the earthquake. So that what happens is that your headache, oh, I got to go to the doctor, I got a headache, right, becomes that what the energy is doing. So is that, and through that process, you are tuned in. So I'm not sure that the energy becomes stronger, although it does. Do you know what I mean? You're tuned in, you feel more, you understand more of it. You can then maybe use it to shift clouds with energy. Controlling it is very difficult. Moving objects, John's done. John's with me now, but we couldn't get the other mic working, and John's moved objects without touching them. But it's a bit wild. Like these things are just a bit like that. Can't you still start to restrict your own mind by saying that cannot happen. Do you know what I mean?
Well, so you're not separate from it. You are part of it, and now you know how much more. Right.
That's right. But as this dawning comes on, I was reading a publication on earthquakes and heart attacks. And what it is there's a slight rise in heart attacks before the earthquake occurs. Right? Now,
Yes.
the scientists say the intake to hospitals is a slight increase of heart attacks prior to an earthquake. But they sort of, oh, well, just because there's a 5% or 10% increase in heart attacks, it doesn't mean to say they're picking up the signals prior to the earthquake. And of course, all these heart attacks are due to people losing their homes. Not that the electromagnetic field is affecting the heart's electromagnetic field and giving them heart attacks. Do you know what I mean? So as soon as now, with a declining magnetic field, and the magnetic field was robbed because of this event that I talked about of the Crab Nebula or particles coming in from space, we started a cycle of magnetic decline. So the magnetic decline has been declining, and this is what's made us insane, because we lack connection to anything. And as soon as we start reconnecting and the magnetic field starts to become charged, we will then start to see this energy again. We will then start to react with this energy again. We will then know why the energy leaks out of my shoulder or anybody's shoulder, where it enters the body.
Perfect.
Does that?
Yes. As a matter of fact, I just read something Cliff High wrote today, and it's about energy transfer is what's happening there.
Well, the energy transfer is, to me, is a real thing. And it's very easy to see it. There are people who leave you drained when you meet them.
Sure.
And, the elderly pair, oh God, my luck's are flickering like hell here now, right? So you get an elderly parent and, they're punishing and they want to live off the child's life force. In fact, I've stumbled across some work by an occultist, and I think his work is genius, but I don't think it's for everybody. And his name is Manly Palmer Hall. He wrote a treatise on magic and natural occultism, and I don't think that people shouldn't enter into reading that book lightly. And he wrote, as far as I'm concerned, he wrote that book as a warning to the Illuminati and the Freemasonry of going down the wrong lines with the energy. And in that book, he talks of the very same thing. And this is from 1953, I think the book is written, and I confer with that. When I stand in a queue of Tesco's, if someone's ill, they take energy from me. It's pretty simple, and I give it freely. I don't hold the field became open when I died, and I left it open. Does that?
Well, that's very important, because once you stop yourself up, you become stagnant. So that's good.
Well, everybody wants to use protection. And I mean, Steve was one of the colleagues of mine, and he said, I don't know why you don't protect, because he's seen me physically vomiting when I've been hit by an energy field, right? And he said, I don't know why you bother. He said, I said, well, if it can end one person's suffering, it's worth it for me. And it was part of a healing process that I was doing for someone who was living here at the time, because she had a very
get the poison out. Yes.
Yeah. So I just took a bit off and made it easier for her. That's all.
Good for you. That was good.
Yeah. It's quite a humbling thing.
Well, it was good for you to recognize it.
Yeah, you can feel it. Yeah, I mean, we'll try some remote viewing later on if I can get John on the mic here, because he can read energy at a distance and see how he gets on with things. If you want to try that.
Oh yeah. Ooh.
Yeah. I'll give you all the target as well. I'll use the same process that I used to train John when he was about 15.
Mm-hmm.
So I can, because what you do is you just you take away any of the mind away from it. So But that's how it will work.
Okay.
We'll see whether it works anyway.
Paul, I want to thank you very much. Your answers were very helpful. I'd like to pass you on to Uranus Rising.
Paul, it's fascinating. I hope we can get to that little exercise. I think it'll be great.
Yeah.
And I just want to remind everybody you can find Paul's theories on YouTube and at iTunes. Please help in his research by purchasing his book, Orbs, Energy, and Myths, The Secrets of the Ancients, at www.lulu.com. That's www.lulu.com. We're going to move into our next group of questions now, and these are around initiation and shamanism. And you started speaking a little bit about the changes that took place in your life, but I'd like to give you some time and space here to tell us about exactly what happened. It seemed like these changes were initiated by your illness or illnesses. You had some out-of-body experiences and some near-death experiences. And in your book, you described it as, one time I left my body and witnessed my life and the lives of other people who had major influences on me. It was as if time stood still. Sorry.
Yeah.
I found this interesting in that in shamanic traditions, illnesses, and especially near-death experiences, often are an initiation or calling from the spirit world, an opening of the second attention, or tearing of the veil between realities. Now, with near-death experiences, shamans pass through a tunnel into the spirit world, and you mentioned this tunnel. Would you describe exactly what happened during this time? You know, what your experiences were and how this affected you into bringing out all these latent talents you didn't know.
Right, that's it. Do you want some detail on how the near death occurred in terms
Yeah,
of?
I think it will be very fascinating for people and very helpful.
And then I'll talk about the experiences, which were pretty they're pretty odd. I was running an office interior and design contracting business. I was very, very ill, and in the summertime I would start to lose pints of blood from my bowel. Lots of my body parts started to break down. They wanted to remove my appendix, my gallbladder, tonsils, and I would seem to be ill in the summer or the periods of dry weather. I went to the doctors. They couldn't solve anything. So I actually took a route looking at all the alternative healers, acupuncture and whatever. So during this time, I was taken into hospital in the ambulance. And I'll just carry it on, and then I'll talk about the near death. By 1996, the water board came around and said that our neighbours who were fabric manufacturer were stealing the water from the drinking supply, because the River Taff water that they had license to pull from was low in the summer. What it meant that we were drinking, or I was drinking, but a number of the other staff weren't as chemically sensitive. I was drinking fecal strep and E. coli, aluminium, manufacturing chemicals, and it all became quite clear. But during this time, I was in and out of my body. It was like as though my soul's been, you know, when you pull a jumper off,
yes,
you pull it off over your head. My energy field seemed as though it was rising to my knees. And I was sort of like looking at myself. And of course, drinking so much of these toxins, I eventually had testicular surgery. For my, my organs, they were swelling up to the size of a watermelon or small melons. I mean, it was just a real horrific time, and I just wanted to go home. I mean, every time I came back into my body, I couldn't bend my hands. It was just like severe pain. So it's not a conventional near-death experience, and I've heard Buddhists talk of the death bardo. I haven't studied Buddhism, and I did hear an interview with Cliff recently, who was talking about the bardo of death. Have you heard of that?
Yes.
So that Christians, when Christians die, they go down the tunnel and they'll see a Christ being, because this is what their conditioning has given them.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you go, a Muslim would see Muhammad. I dare say that an atheist would go down the tunnel and see dead relatives or whatever, or whatever their conditioning. So your conditioning creates what you see at the point of death.
Correct.
Now, I had none of that, and I always, and I have spent the last, early 90s, so up until 96, I was drinking polluted water and basically poisoning myself. So up until 96, I had these unconventional near-death experiences, and a number of them. So let me see if I can explain. It took me 20 years to understand what I'd experienced, and let me try and put it into words. It's difficult. These are personal things. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I do. Having had two near-death experiences myself, I do understand translating it into the words is very difficult.
It's very difficult. So anyway, on this one occasion, I went into a place that was totally black, absolutely black. And in it was absolute truth. It was beyond. I knew that when I went, there was the mind becomes crystal clear. It's like the difference between asleep and awake. And we think we're awake now, but when you return, it's crystal clear. It's like everything is just crystal. It's like returning home. It's like the natural nature of the soul is not attached to matter. I think, in fact, I sent an email to somebody and said those words yesterday. So I'm just waiting to go back there, but obviously I came back and I knew that I had to do something, and some of these things were prophesized and they were interesting, So
who
anyway,
were they prophesized by?
Because I was so ill, I really don't know. I wouldn't like to say, it's a very
but
uncomfortable.
you came back with a sense
knowing.
of purpose.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
knowing, yeah.
And knowing, I could tell you about some things, but when they come true, do you know what I mean? When they come true,
Yeah.
Like Haiti, and Greenland melting and gases and the land moving upwards. And there's stuff about dormant. That hasn't happened yet. The dormant mountain called the Sugarloaf, and there were numbers of other things like there's like these rods lights and all sorts of very strange stuff. I couldn't, it makes sense. It makes sense now, but it didn't at the time. Do you know what I mean? So anyway,
Yes.
so in this blackness was absolute knowing, and you are accountable to this I wouldn't have described it in 96 this way, but the absolute being of truth.
Mm.
And so you're accountable to yourself.
Yes.
In absolute truth, not a judgment now. You are accountable. So let's say that you run through your life and it runs you through your life crystal clear. There ain't anywhere to hide. Because you ain't got a body to look down at, or you're in this truth, and you review your life, and then the question which you ask yourself is, would you change anything? And I said, well, no. I mean, firstly, I could. I describe it to others in describing this process of saying, if I knew what the lottery numbers were on the Sunday, I would have chosen those numbers on the Saturday. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
But because I'm ignorant and I made mistakes, I didn't make those mistakes to harm people. If I harmed anyone, I didn't do that. I did that out of ignorance. And as I grew, I didn't make those mistakes again. So I have no regrets.
Yes, I understand. Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So then I have no regrets because I know the nature that I would have done it the same, given the same information and the same path. I would have made the same thing.
Yes.
So to me, it was fairly simple that. And then you go into another alternative life.
Mm.
And you could call it temptation, but you also could call it a perfect life.
Mm.
So in that life I married somebody. I was asked to go into business with someone who sold out for 70 million. And they sold to PMI Baby. They set up an airline. And I seen that life and what that life would have brought. And it was a hell of a life, right?
Yes.
Then this thing inside you that asked the question: Do you now have any regrets? And I said, well, that would mean I'd never married Tracy. I'd never have my son Matthew and Jade.
Yeah.
How could I deny their very existence? So then you move on. But this happens in an instant. It's like weird. You struggle with space and time being still.
Yes. Yes.
Do you know what I mean? It's like that.
Yes.
But
yes.
then I became my mother, and then there were things like the ring, and I seen a wedding ring, and I asked her what happened with the wedding ring, and one night after my father died fairly young, he died when I was 8, And one night when she woke up in the night, her wedding ring was on a pillow. No, she couldn't take it off because it was that tight. And she said to me, well, how did you know about that? Do you know what I mean? And I said about the ring, the kid and stuff like that. So I lived her life. There were little bits of issues that I had with my mum. I didn't think that she allowed the children to grieve properly when my father dropped dead. We weren't allowed to go to the funeral. She was selfish in her grief. Because she grieved so hard, she became selfish in that grief.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you understand that.
I certainly do.
That's right. And so that is the selfish in you. Oh me, why is this happened to me? And then I realised that this was the nature of my mother, and it was handed down. So I became her. I felt her. I forgived her. I knew her. I was her.
But this must be a blossoming of compassion.
Absolutely, because you cannot have love without forgiveness. So those little things I was saying, oh, you could have done better, Mum, or like blah blah blah. Of course, all that's gone. I can love unconditionally. My mother did the best that she could do.
Yes,
You know what I mean?
Given the circumstances and the information she had, yes.
And then you begin to understand about the generations of how the ego is delivered and the pain is delivered throughout the generations. So you become her mother or other people in those lives. And so all of a sudden, you know that, you see, it brings this concept to life, which is a very unpalatable concept, but it's a concept. Time is still. And so you say that an abused child 80% of those abused children will end up abusing other children. If time is still, who is the abuser?
Yeah.
Which point of time do you choose? And who is the abuser? And so we live in an age, where it takes you back to the original break-in and this disconnection from nature. And I think there's another question coming out on a similar theme, but I wrote to Michael Tsarian about this current age of the Mayan calendar, this murder, death, kill age, the age of separation. And the ego and pain and suffering are handed down through the generation. This is my understanding. So this pain and suffering through the generation is handed down, is handed down, is handed down. And only when you break that cycle can you spiritually grow, or whatever, you grow within yourself. And only through suffering can you grow anyway. In this current age, anyway.
Yes.
In this current age.
And then how do you experience that these near-death experiences, you came back in to this life with a mission and with a purpose, and then you have these extraordinary powers of energy transfer?
No. I think that what it is I understand it, and I can show people it, and they can do it for themselves. And it's quite simple. It's very simple to demonstrate. All the children on my street could do it. And there are a number of stories that when we get to that stage, I'll be able to tell you about. So but at the time it was very difficult because I didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
I used to sit on the floor, and I'd sit on the floor and I would rock back and forth for 5. So you go 1, like a metronome.
Yes.
So you'd tick forwards and back 6 times, or no, 5 times it was. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you'd stop upright and you'd tick back and forth 15 times. And then you'd stop and you'd tick back and forth. So you'd be rocking back and forth. So I thought it was like some sort of Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, or motor neuron disease, because I just couldn't understand what was happening.
Yeah.
And then I could hold energy bars and push them into the floor and lock out magnetic fields.
Yeah.
So in Avebury, I was when the dowsing rods were spinning, I was chucking these rods into the floor, and it would stop them from spinning. And I'm going, well, I didn't even know I could do it. Do you know what I mean? It's like as though this rebirth actually disconnected me from either recharged me in energetic terms, or I didn't come back knowing the old bar way, but I understood that I don't even know what I did understand. To be honest, I didn't know what I was. To be honest, I was so. Well, firstly, I was so ill. and it took 5 years to recover from 96. So
Mm-hmm.
I lost a decade of my life.
Yeah.
So that was and there were a lot of implications, financially, and then I took nearly 3 years off work, not that I could, in terms of finding a job, to carry on the research. So
Yes.
these were, it's like I said, well, I don't care anymore. I know I'm going to die. I know there's no hassle in it. It's pretty cool, actually. This place is very evil because you can feel the evil leaking out of people. But
Yeah.
then it's not them evil. It is just the generation that we're in.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yes,
If
I
you,
do.
so what you would be sort of receiving from people as you stood in the queue in Tesco's or Walmart, you have Walmart in America, you would be feeling the energy of their suffering.
Yes, that's a perfect way of saying it. Perfect way of saying it. And
So
I
I
think
wouldn't.
that people also naturally seek out people like you that are transmitting energy all the time anyway. They're attracted to you unconsciously.
Well, we had a phase of there was a young man, a very young man, who I used to take a group of them fishing. I fostered, or was going to adopt one of them. They had a no, they just sort of came through the door. It's like really weird, they're sort of like turning up but the one was he was fascinating. His father used to drink and be very, very violent. And I could never understand why he turned up at my door at 11 o'clock. And of course, it was when the pubs were emptying.
That's right.
So he would
Yeah.
just turn up at the door. He would wait until his father had gone to sleep and the beating of his mother had gone. I mean, he had his shotguns taken off him, and he'd sit with me, and he'd just sit there. He wouldn't say, "I go, do you want tea?" And he'd go, "Yeah, I'll have tea." And that's all. But the door was open, and it was like they just came, and it was a very strange time, They were just like the woman next door said, "Why are all these children coming to your home?" And I couldn't understand it. They just, some of them were friends, and some of them were friends of Nick, who I did healing on, who I'll talk about later. So he had twins and a son, and the son knew them all. So, but they just seemed to come. So they did come to. I don't know whether it was coming to that energy or whether it was just that it was a safe place for them.
Or both.
Or both.
Yes. Well, thank you, Paul. It's always fascinating to hear these kind of stories, and thank you for sharing this with us.
Yeah,
I do want to say one thing really quickly. Is sometimes the connection is going a little bit, but we're convinced that it's your energy that's causing some disruption, and we're all feeling some energy coming through. So I just wanted to point that out for the listeners.
Well, John was laughing. He said, "You should have seen the lights in the corner of my house." So, and again, we just chuckle over it because we've done some crazy. When it's crazy, it is. It's sometimes it's crazy because one of the healings, I'll tell you why I stopped healing for years, because it did my head in. It was just like, that can't happen.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
You're just so, that shouldn't be happening,
Yeah. Thank you, Paul. I appreciate your lovely answer. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Uranus Rising. Hello, Paul. This is Gemini. How are you? And I would have to agree with Uranus Rising. We can definitely feel your energy this evening.
Yeah.
It's great. Yeah. I have a question for you from one of our forum members, Green Meadow, and she would like to know that there is a period, and she read this in your book, a period during the Maunder minimum when there was an increase in sightings of unexplained lights.
Yeah.
And she wants to know what you thought was going on at that time, and are we headed for another period where we will see more unexplained lights?
Yeah, I would say that this is definite, that we are going to be seeing more of these the Orb bar wave. It was recorded in, as I say, the basal woodcut of 1561 and 1565, and that was during the Maunder minimum, or to the tail end of the Little Ice Age, as it was known. I haven't been able to tie up all these solar minimums to the art and the records, but there was a 1730 piece of art which corresponded with the Dalton minimum, and there was French paintings of the orbs and spheres in Angers in France around, I think it was 742, and of course in the rock art, Bronze Age rock art, there is literally thousands of what they call cut marks or rings or whatever. And I suggest that that was seen as a common thing. So it was seen all the time. I would suggest probably at the magnetic centers where they built the megalithic standing stones, pyramids and all those places where we know that the magnetic energy of the earth fluctuates, and we would be through the increased energy at those positions be seeing it. So now we have a white sun. It was, in fact, by the time I finished the book, I was predicting this minimum that we know, and it's gone from yellow to white. And I wrote to a chappie called Maurice Cottrell. I was trying to tie up some of his data with the success rate and the failure rate of failing to record the bars, and I'll explain that later on in as the magnetic winding theory that Maurice Cottrell came up with. So we're now in a minimum, and the mechanics of that minimum means the heliosphere is weakened. I believe that the sun's field is now in contraction, and this allows particles in from other solar systems, and the stream from the bell and the megalithic stone circles can be explained as us being bombarded with a particle that will recharge our magnetic field, and then we will go back into the cycle of magnetic increase, the magnetic field increasing. And as the magnetic field increasing, we will see more and more of the sky phenomenon.
Okay. That's interesting. And, you touched on the sun being white versus yellow. Is that part of what we're going through with the weakening?
Well, when I was a kid, you couldn't look at the sun, right? I often look at the sun now. And what I'll do is early morning, if there's a mist over the sun, you can look at it, and you'll see it. If you stare at it long enough, and I'm not suggesting anyone do it, I'll do it because I'm interested in what's happening in the sun. You will see it eventually. Now, whether this is an optical effect of the eye, it changes from white to black.
Yes, right? I've noticed that.
And also, it starts oscillating in its center. So what we've got is an oscillation from the center that you can look at. I couldn't look at the sun because it was bright yellow for more than a second before the retinas, you're just burning in your eyes. You can look at it for 20 minutes if you've got a bit of cloud cover, you can look at it. You couldn't even look at it through cloud cover when I was a kid.
Yes, I remember.
Of course, Cliff's experiments with that 18th century prism that he's had, this suggesting that the light frequencies are changing as well. So we're in a minimum. I believe in cycles of time, so that if you get a magnetic decline for 5,000 years, then you should have a regeneration, or we have the end. And because I don't believe, I believe in in the cycles of time, so that we're going to go through a regeneration of magnetic field, and we're going to regain this understanding of the universe, of what was talked of in the Rish and many other ancient mythologies, and hopefully we can maintain our levels of technology as well. We could then be a less selfish world, because we basically connect into the fields of energy, which become as again more energized, and so this remote viewing would be a common thing. You could also then look at any one individual, and you would know straight away what they are, because you can feel it. So you'd never vote for a corrupt leader anymore. It's pretty simple. The Illuminati, the controlling elite, the ones who worship God of money, they're our brothers and sisters. I don't know why they would deny God and worship what is their concept of the devil, or negative forces,
Right.
But they're our brothers and sisters, and they will have to come to terms with what they're doing in that accountability to themselves, because they won't be able to lie to themselves in that accountability. It's absolute truth. You know what I mean?
I do, and it'll
so
be a
they'll
welcome
have
change.
and they'll have to come back and relearn this process. They'll have to relearn the right way. They'll have to come back. I don't know. Do you believe in reincarnation? I never did.
Yes, I do, and it's a fluid belief as the more I learn. Yes.
Yeah, well, I remember that one of the representatives who came to me when I was dying, right? So I was yellow, and he had a pinstripe suit on, right?
Okay.
And he came into my office, and he always had he was a immaculate rep, and a very good rep as well, So he'd come into my offices, and he wanted to sell me furniture, and he changed into like a linen. Like an Arab would wear, and sandals, so, and I was remembering from when we used to trade before in a past life in Sardinia, and I have many of these flashbacks coming back. So it was, and as a conventional Christian, my mother was a Sunday school teacher, and it was like, and I go, and I'm sitting behind my desk, and I'm going, he's in a suit, Paul. He's in a suit. He's in a suit. Like the Wizard of Oz. I want to go home, clicking your feet. And I'm going, oh, he's in a suit. I know he's in a suit. And and I'm going, and I'm looking at him, and I'm thinking, oh, this is too. And I went home in the end. I said, oh, Leighton, I can't see you. Oops, I can't see you. I'm going home. So, yeah.
Now, do you think he had any recollection of you?
Oh well, there is an absolutely fascinating one. I met two of my brothers, and all right, we can call it imagination because there's no proof, is there? You could say that this is imagination. I can give you evidence on the science, and I can quote stuff, and I can, and I'm very much an evidence-based person. But there's no. This is like. There's no evidence to it. But anyway, there's a printer in Wales who I knew, and I met him, and I knew he was my brother in a past life. And it was first century, early, this first century, maybe 20 AD, or you know,
Mm-hmm.
and we were soldiers, and we were ruthless soldiers. I met another person who was my brother as well, and we were ruthless soldiers. We were so ruthless that we cut the heads off horses.
Mm.
So this is the killing children.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was all right for Moses to command his people to kill the babies.
Right.
So anyway, so this is where the imagination stops, and sort of a reality comes in. So I told this he did sports embroidery and did and printing and journal printing and stuff like that. So when the final day that I was getting rid of my copying company, one of the last few actions I did, I went to see him, and I went into his embroidery room, and he was doing a rugby kit, embroidery on the rugby kit. So I forgot to tell you something, that when we went into battle, we had a horse's head on our standard dripping with blood.
Mm.
So we would go into battle with this, and everyone would run because we'd win the battle, because everyone knew that we. Now, this should be easy to find in history if there were three brothers. I mean, I'd never looked because I'd never. So we're walking in with this standard, the head dripping with blood. So it may be that this could be imagination or whatever. But the printer was embroidering a set of rugby kit, and this was when I was just about to move out of business, and that was the end of it all. And he was embroidering on the shirt a horse's head dripping with blood.
Oh gosh.
And I told him about this before, that he was my brother, and he thought, he knew I could heal because I was doing healing on his knees. So and then when he's seen it, I said, "Hey Jeff," and again, I'm sorry for using the names, because it's not fair to these people. I said, "What are you embroidering there?" And he looked down and he said, "Oh no," He goes, "Oh no." And so I'll tell you some of the healings because they're funny as well,
Wow.
But I mean, does this make it real? It's just my story. I mean, personally, I don't particularly care whether people consider the orbs as energy. I don't want people to think they're UFOs invading the Earth. That matters to me.
Right.
If people think that I'm insane, and I've helped a couple of people along the way, then that's fine. I'll carry on my insanity. Do you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. Absolutely.
It doesn't matter to me. It's I know what I am. I know what I do. The world knows. Let the world think whatever. It doesn't matter.
You're right. It doesn't matter. Well, I appreciate that story and looking forward to hearing more.
I know it's off subject.
That's quite all right. We'll just let this go where it needs to. I do have a question for you, though, about the Don Juan teachings by Carlos Castaneda. He spoke of an assemblage point that exists as a point of energy outside the human being. And I was curious if you have any thoughts on the orbs you see near humans or the energetic objects as being the energy signature of that human. Was that similar to what he was explaining in his teachings?
I've never. Again, I'm not widely read. I'm, obviously dyslexic, so my mind works in a different way as well. So I tend not to read lots of long, heavy books. So I wouldn't know about Don Juan's teachings. So I've never really, I see it in my own way. Do you know what I mean?
I do
But
know what you mean. Yes.
I've never considered it. I don't know whether this is any. I've put a little note to this question because I didn't. It's not something I could answer easy. The Buddha referenced spheres of consciousness. The spheres that are coming and going, the spheres of consciousness, and I think he wasn't. I think he could have actually been. I think he could have actually been talking about how thought really works. I don't know. Maybe is that the kind of thing that you were thinking of, or?
Well, that's what I'm wondering, is if he was actually seeing the orbs of energy, and then incorporated that into his books.
It could. I haven't again. I haven't seen his work, but I've often wondered the thought is thought in the sphere. Where is our mind? Where is the message coming from? Where's that thought come from? How does the field work? What are we? What is our soul? And I think this goes a long way to answering it, but it will take time. I mean, 4,500 years or 5,000 years since this was lost. I think that everyone has to contribute and everybody has to reconnect to the oneness, to the field, to the energetic field, and we have to then really consider the weakest members of the planet.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that.
And show compassion in everything. I eat meat, so I don't show compassion in everything I do. There's some Buddhists, but I think there's a reverence for nature within me, and I mean, we spend more time, John and I, in the woods with our dogs than anything else, and we sit there and we just sit there and recharge our souls. If many people do that anyway, but that's our cup of tea sort of thing,
It's lovely to do that. I know exactly what you mean.
I just go there with the dogs, and it's just a wonderful experience. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Paul. I appreciate that. And we're going to move on to one of my favorite topics, energy healing and remote healing and viewing. And the next question is coming from Uranus Rising.
Hi, Paul.
Hiya.
Remember a while back when you had never met me or known anything about me, and you did a remote viewing of me, or should I say my energy field. And but remote viewing is a term that you use, and just for the sake of clarity, so we don't confuse it with people who do this remote viewing in the that are military trained, could I just perhaps rename it a bit as distant energetic viewing? Anyway, you quite accurately identified a place where I was leaking energy. And then you did an energy healing for me. And it was wonderful and it worked. Could you tell us how you do this type of energy healing? I remember you described that you see a stick figure.
Yeah.
And but could you start from there maybe?
So this is where you participate now.
Okay.
Right. That's everyone as well. And that's everyone listening in the future as well.
Lovely.
Right? So what I'll try and do now is just tell you I'll give you initial P, right? That's all you have to know. It's not me, so you've got no knowledge, it's just P, all right?
Okay.
So what you need to do now, right, is face this person towards you. Now he's a stick figure now, right? So what you want to do now is put your hand up and just put it to the side of his head. So your hand will naturally go to the head and it will sit on the head.
Okay.
Right? Is everyone doing this? Is everyone going to have a go with this?
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. So what you can do now, right, is if you draw your hand across the face and the nose and go to the other side, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yes.
Have you done that? Can you feel a spiral coming out of the side of the jaw or the temple? Can you feel arthritis? Can you feel that this person has arthritis? Of course, I've been doing. Can you just don't usually go now? It's just the breath on your hand.
Mm-hmm.
I broke my finger playing cricket, so I know when anybody's got arthritis because it hits my little finger where I broke it, and
Okay,
that
that's a,
signature gives me the arthritis signature. So
yeah.
so can you feel just gently come back across and feel again, and
Just
then
on
if
his
you
face.
yeah, and then just go on the throat,
Mm-hmm.
come to the shoulders now.
Mm-hmm.
Come down the arms, and if you come on to the lungs, and just stay on the lungs for a bit. Can you feel anything there?
I don't, but I did feel something towards the wrist.
Oh, you've been down the arm, have you?
Yeah, because you said go down the arm, so I went
Ah,
down the
right.
arm.
So you went on to the arms. Come back onto the lungs. See if you can feel the spirals on the lungs. Now I've suggested it, so it's not a good way. I don't like doing that.
Uh-huh.
So see if you can feel any pins and needles coming off your hands or the spirals coming out of the lungs.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I do.
Well, that person's a smoker,
Ah, okay.
right?
Yeah.
So what you're doing now is you're feeling actually with your hand. So
Yes.
what we'll do now, right, is John and I, if everyone participating, whether their mic is switched on or not, and everybody listening in the future to this conversation, now put your hand up to to your screen or away from you, so you're just giving like a please stop sign with the hand.
Mm-hmm.
And what John and I will do is see if we can, and I can't promise that we can do this, is connect to the energy of love. And we'll see if
Okay.
we can push it through the internet, the airwaves, and into all the participants of the interview. All right, John? So you're all right to you, John? So what John's now is stilling himself. He's closing his eyes. He's looking at the energy and he's pushing. Now I've obviously got to keep talking, so I can't really still myself enough. Now I'm just right. Now normally when I'm working like this, if I'm working with the severe illness or whatever, I will do the om sound. So you now it
Yes.
sounds strange. So it's
No, I'm used to it. Yes.
and what happens at that time, and then obviously you keep on vibrating it, and vibrating it, you get a build up and a change in frequency of energy. So can you feel anything in your hands now?
My hand is absolutely on fire. Yes.
Yeah. John's laughing and he's just put his stuff up. So we're now just wobbling energy through this field.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We can, so that's so we'll stop now. I can't connect to the love because it it's not we don't control the energy, we just push the energy, we convert the energy, and
Yes.
that's all we can do. We
Yes.
can't, there are times when we'd like to hear love. Firstly, we make no promises about anything. I mean, I've been working with brain tumor recently, and I don't make any promises to people. Do you know what I mean? We
Yes.
just serve the energy, and we do our best.
Yes.
That's about it.
Yes. That's a lovely way of putting it, serving the energy. And then if
But
that
it'll be
if that
it,
gives space for that person to
mm,
take it or not take it, depending on
yeah.
what their choices are and what their
I see it.
situation.
I know it's a Christian thing, but I see it as thy will be done.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's not my will.
Yes.
Just let
That's
it be
great.
what it is. Thy will
Mm.
be. So that's how I see it, and it's very much how. Did you? I'll just ask. What do you feel, John?
Well, like
like we were saying, I was moving energy around. I tried to get it so you kind of have a warm, fuzzy feeling. As you said, then your hand was on fire, and that's one of the most common things that people feel.
Do you have any spirals? Do you have the spirals?
To be honest, I had nothing like that. Obviously, I was just pushing energy. I wanted everyone to feel something.
Yeah.
But that is one of the most common when everyone feels it's hot. And obviously, then when we've done more healing and keep at it, they obviously open up a bit more. They feel a bit more like that. So yeah, that's what I felt. Yeah.
Lovely.
So that was John, who's worked with me since he was
15, 16.
15, 14. He's 20. Oh, you're 24?
24.
24 now. So.
What a lovely gift he has in you as a mentor. That's great.
I suppose we mentor each other. That's what.
Yes.
Great. I just want to qualify something that you just said. When I was coaching rugby, I learned to be a coach of rugby by coaching the children. The children taught me to be a coach. And so John has taught me more than I can say. He taught me as much as I've taught him.
That's lovely. That's lovely.
It's a two-way exchange.
Co-creation.
That's right. I mean, who stands on the moral high ground? Nobody.
Yeah.
We're all one. So we try to avoid the word healing.
Okay. What word do you use?
We balance energy fields.
Yes.
But the trouble is if you go and say, "Oh, can I balance your energy field because you're ill?" They say, "Oh, that's healing, isn't it?" Do you know what I mean? Because it implies the superiority to the healer. We just balance energy fields.
Yes. Brilliant. In fact, Cliff put up a new article on his website today at halfpasthuman.com, and he talks about the very thing. So it must be in the field today, Paul.
Right. What did he say?
Well, I won't go into it. I'll leave everybody to have a look at it. But also, when you're viewing someone, can you perceive their clarity or intentions? In other words, sometimes I can sense there's dark spots or something in me resists them, and I wonder if that's kind of alluding to what you pick up on.
Well, when we get people who work with not nice energy, can we say that there are people who work with not nice energy?
I think that would be fair. That?
Yes. Well, when we come close to them, what you get is an energy that will hit you in the throat. It'd be like two fingers pushing in your windpipe. Now, out of my group of friends and people that I know, my wife feels that energy. Obviously, I don't have to say that John does, because John does. My daughter does. My son does. Nathan, I won't say his surname, does. And also you get the sick feeling. But all you're doing is you're ripping off their negative energy into your light.
Okay.
So yes, we know that. I can, tell me someone you don't like, and I'll tell you whether they've got that energy. I mean, I've done it. I've done it to we used to walk people around the megaliths, walk them through the stones. We used to clear the energy off the stones before we walked them, and then they'd feel all the pushes and pull, the natural flows, because they get blocked. So you balance up the field of the stone circle, and then we walk them around it, and they'll get pushed one way, or they could, one time a person couldn't even lift their feet off the floor because they were locked into the field. So there's this balancing of energy, and this feeling of energy takes you to all sorts of strange, but it's our way of life.
Yeah. And
we have a different language. Sometimes I can't talk to people because I'm in fear. And of course, if I work in a science department of a university, right, I can't talk. I have to sit in a room on my own because I think that something will slip out. Do you know what I mean? And yet I was asked if any, could I hand over some of the research, but I think just cherry picking it is not good. I don't think it will be fair.
I think you might agree with my thoughts on this. Is I think you're speaking the language of the future. And that's how we will begin to speak shortly.
Yeah, we will. I mean, there was a time when there was one language, and it was the language of the energy.
Yeah.
That spirals. This man gives it me in the throat. Blah blah blah. Do you know what I mean? We have a different set of language, and even John's mum and dad, sort of know what we're going on about. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like I went to primary school with John's dad. And so it's so it sort of spills out, and it's slowly growing. It's like Rupert Sheldrake's work on rats, wasn't it? You teach one, and then the second one in a different state will learn it quicker. And do you know what I mean? It's like this information we'll share. And it would not because of the internet, it'll just be because it will come into our minds. We'll know it.
Yes.
I didn't jump to any conclusions. I didn't say the Archangel Gabriel was talking to me. Do you know what I mean? I just said, well, get behind me, whatever you are, you can bugger off. Do you know what I mean? And if you are what you say you are, then you're not going to take any offense for me to tell you to F off.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because the spirit world is full of fraud. Now that may be surprised as much fraud as is on the planet, unfortunately. And that comes from the consecrated ground scenario. So which is a question further down, I think.
Yeah. Wow. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. I'll move on to this next question, which is from Jules. And he's curious in how you perform your healing. What rituals do you perform, if any? What are you thinking or visualize when you're healing someone, particularly this distant energy healing or balancing, I should say, to use your new language?
Yeah.
With the times we are living in, any chance of distributing this information while we can is very important, he thinks.
Yeah. It is the concept that I will be done. There's no visualization. We can go into these altered states more or less straight away, just by closing our eyes, and we're there.
Yeah.
I don't know how that happens.
And do you feel that the Om, saying the Om helps you?
Yeah, that I'm laughing because John first heard the sounds of the earth by me Oming. Right. So we were in a prehistoric cave, and had the cave rock cuttings in it, and I started Oming, and in this cave, and it started to bounce. It was like a parabolic reflector on their matlock, and it was bouncing back, and he could hear the high pitched whistle.
Yeah.
When energy, so when you're healing, those frequencies change, right? So you've got the high pitch. Like I was working with one cancer patient, and I had the two tones. So I had a high pitch and a low in the ears. And of course, as you start pushing more energy in, they get louder and louder. So a number of tinnitus sufferers. One of my friends is I go fishing with. He's got a small warrior boat, and he said, "Oh, I got tinnitus, and the doctors, it's a problem with the inflammation in the ear." And I said, "Oh, is it?" I said, "Oh, that's interesting." I said, "It may be that." I said, stand on the floor in my living room." I said, "And gently, slowly turn around like you're going around a clock face.
Mm.
And as you turn, the magnetic field that you're standing on that's creating that vibration switches off, and the whistling stops. And then if you turn back slowly, so if you just turn your head very, very slowly, this is in the early stages. In the later stages, when you're working with energy, it's on all the time or off all the time, or it's just a comfortable sound that's coming from the earth. So in the early stages of tinnitus sufferers who are not using energy, they will be able to turn their head slowly and it will switch off. Not all of them, because some of them will have information in the ear, but I would suggest the majority, or I've only tried it with two or three people and seen the results of that. And you need to do a bigger medical study.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? To make a sort of percentage statement.
Wow. One thing that I've heard is in intonating the Om that it vibrates the palate, which then directly releases energy into the pineal gland as well. Have you heard that?
I haven't, no. I mean, you do vibrate. It's sort of in your stomach, and it's like it's definitely moving in my throat. So it's a strange. And when I've been doing
I do it too, Paul.
Yeah,
I do it too.
On these, these different humor,
okay,
whatever. And of course they start laughing, like and you're thinking, oh yeah, well it is funny, isn't it? Someone sort of making a sound like that. Yeah, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's
great. And there's a brief question from Neil, who hasn't been able to join us tonight. Unfortunately, we can't find him someplace. Anyway, he wants to know if you have a method that anyone can tap in to learn and interact with. But I know you've been talking about, we did the little exercise and intoning the Om. Is there anything else you could add to that?
Well, I tell you what John used to do with his friends, because some of it, he would take pictures of three similar pictures, right? And this is a thing that I showed him in the early stages, probably 14 or whatever, 15 or whatever. Is John then would place energy into the pictures, and he would put them up on the internet. And he would put like love into them, and then he would just say he could post them on the forum or any forum if anybody was interested in trying to work this out. And perhaps I'll give you an explanation to it. Right, when I was working with John in the early times, I put love and I put jealousy and I put something. It wasn't jealousy. It was the sibling rivalry, the thought of sibling rivalry, the energy of sibling rivalry into the middle spoon. So there's three spoons sitting on the table. So when John put his hand, the love he put over the spoon, and he said, "Oh, I can see my mother there. Why would that be?" And I go, and I'm chuckling to myself now because they're three spoons.
Yes.
Right. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And then the middle one, he goes right and see Thomas, which is his brother, and the sibling rivalry, right? So the energy of that. And I said, well, I have to be honest with you, John. You've got an issue with your brother, haven't you? And so what the answers come back is because you're looking at spoons, you've got no ego or consciousness other than the spoon.
Yeah.
So then you put the energy into the spoon. Like, have you seen people put energy into water, and then You know, you make them weak if you put it on the heart, and they make them weaker. And you can make them stronger just by changing the field of the energy of the
Yes.
water.
Yes.
So that kind of thing. And it you know, now this rivalry occurred from a trauma in my dear friends Ken and Sue, John's mother and father.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened was that Sue lost a 3-year-old child, and
Yeah.
Thomas was born directly after that. And this is you know, I don't sort of go airing people's linen because you know, these are private and very difficult things. But Sue, and I love it a bit, so I nearly see her every day when I pick the dogs up. She's very
Yeah.
kind to me. And of course, she would be like any other mother, heaping concern on her next child, and the next child was Thomas, and John was the oldest.
Naturally, yes.
You know, so and so just by viewing that, I knew that, experiencing that thing. So there's and they are natural expressions of grief, and
Yes.
I wouldn't have liked to have been through those things. So, but you move on. You move on to these things. You don't let them hold you back. Your life is for learning from pain.
Yeah.
I've had my own pain, and I've learned from it.
Mm-hmm.
So, just got to let it go.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not that easy, though.
No.
It's hard. And then people say, "Well, how can you do that?" And I say, "Well, it's tears and buckets of tears and God knows what." And then you move on. Yeah, your life
And
is
too short, and you can choose not to hold on to it. You can let it go.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Paul. I love all the stories you're sharing with us. I'm going to now turn it over to Perry Winkle. Thank you.
Hi, Paul. I noticed that the photos of the orbs on different areas of your body, they look like energetic areas. And I wondered if through your research, if you've noticed a correlation between areas that others have mapped as energetic areas and the areas the orbs like to hang out on.
Yeah, this is a great question. It's like, so have you seen the research? Have you seen the video with the bars that enter the left wrist?
I downloaded your book and I went through it.
Yeah. No, there's a video on YouTube, right? Well, in about 2004 or 5, John was filming in the woods, and I was working with some energy, and the bars. Right, now the bar is the orb, and the bar. It enters into the left wrist, across the left wrist. Now, orbs attached to the back of the hand push strands into the palm of the hand and surround the hand as an energetic field. So the bars now enter the left wrist. They enter in pairs, right? Now, this is only from one video, so we haven't got enough of it really but it enters the left wrist. And at the same time, it enters into the left hip, and as the left hip enters the left hip first, and then it enters into the left wrist, and then they both enter into your body. Occasionally, I'll find like a little click, but it's not a click of bone; it's a click of something. I can't say. So that's where the bars enter, and they also enter in pairs on the right ankle. Vertically now, those are the areas we filmed. The energy leaks out of the back shoulder on the left scapula, but we haven't got any video of that as such. Now, this is where it gets interesting. There was an Iceman called Otzi. Have you heard of him?
No, I'm not sure. I don't think so.
He was frozen in Swiss Alps, I think it was. He's called Otzi, a 3,500-year-old shaman. He's believed to be perfectly preserved, and in the tattoos on, he has tattoos on his left wrist, left hip, and the two bars are on the right ankle. Right. So now we have. So now we know we filmed these things, and we know that the energy enters there. What was interesting is that in these tattoos were quartz. The archaeologists said that this happened just by chance. And yet we found blocks of quartz buried in ley lines. So these energy fields, which are ley lines, and the energy fields of a human being, which are ley lines, but they're just energy centers where energy enters, are one and the same. So they were tattooing quartz into their wrists. Now, the New Zealand rugby team use power bands, or have been, and it's a quartz band that sits on the energy center of the wrist. So we've come full circle.
I want one. I want one.
Yeah, well, you'll have to get the right one. What you do, put them on your arm, right? Hold your arm out, and get someone to push on your arm, see if your arm's stronger. Take it off, because sometimes some of them don't work for people, right? So you pull it off, and you hold your arm out, and if you're weaker, you know that I will give your energy a boost.
Okay, thank you. That's a great answer. I'm going to pass you on now. Okay. Gemini is going to ask you some questions now.
Thank you, Paul. And I want to remind our interviewers that you can help Paul in his research by purchasing his book, Orbs, Energy and Myths, The Secret of the Ancients, at www.lulu.com. You will also find his work on YouTube and at iTunes. Paul, we're going to be moving on to prehistory, ancient cultures, and other mysteries. And I would like to know if you're able to detect a difference in the orb structure based on the energy of the area. Areas where there have been negative energy, such as the Battle of Orwin Bridge, the United States Civil War battlefields, etc., versus areas that are conceived as having positive energy, such as ley lines.
Absolutely. In 2004, I went to America for a family wedding. And I knew nothing of American history. I knew you had a battle, and a couple of people fought in that battle, the French and the British, I think it was. But we were traveling to a place called Chambersburg, would you know that place? I don't know.
Yes.
So we were traveling to Chambersburg. Someone wanted to get hand-rolled cigars in a shop there. I don't know where it was. I got relatives in America, and I was violently ill. And I saw this great man, or I felt the energy or presence of a battle. And of course, then when I come back and I speak to my cousin, there was a battle in Chambersburg. So you can feel it. And in fact, I was amazed how little this will sound insulting to the American Indians, but I came across a graveyard. I came across some children. It's difficult to talk about it because it undermines all the hard work that I'm putting in. But there were children who were trapped in the spirit world, and they didn't know they died. They took me to their small little graves. I think there were the children one in there's a cemetery just in Cherokee, in the car park of the Cherokee Visitor Center, and they called me over there. I didn't go into the Visitor Center. I was called into them to release them to the light. So yes, you can. Battles hold, particularly if the souls don't know they're dead. They can continue that battle in that area for generations, to be honest. So this energy fields then just holds holds the murder, death, kill age that we live in. They're not negative areas per se, but over time they'll become negative energies until the planet cleanses itself of all this death, this murder, the geoengineering, the suffering, the starvation. Then, and as the Earth renews its magnetic field, it will cleanse itself. And obviously, I've been pushing energy. I took some energy over to America in spheres and put them into places, but they're concepts that are very, I'm entering into concepts that only people who can do that could understand it. I don't mean to be, it's a very difficult question, but there are definitely that Chambersburg energy. You drive along the road and there's a grassed area and you come into the town. I would take it from the bottom of the town, so that would be coming in from the south of the town, and just before you reach the town, it's there. Whatever was there, it was there. And it whacked me probably more than the church in Milford Haven. Made me really violently ill. Shuddering, in fact. You're like shaking and vomiting.
Right.
And everyone's going, what's the matter? And I go, oh, nothing. I'm just spewing out the window, and they're going, well. So I think these areas have to be cleansed. And I think that I'm surprised that some of the shaman American Indians haven't done it. I was disappointed, really, to be honest. There isn't a judge, we went to Cherokee and they had a Santa land there and casinos. I went there looking for these people who I could just share some stuff. I wanted to know how they, like moving feathers and they can move them up and down and stuff like that, and I wanted to show them some energy stuff. And but of course, we arranged a meeting with Debbie Standing Deer, I think, but it all fell apart. I don't know. She was going to take me to the Cherokee elders. I don't know why it didn't happen. It just didn't come up. I think Alex, again, it's old stuff, and I don't want to go into it really.
Sure.
But we arranged to meet her there, and that's where those children were. So I've been to America twice, one in 2004, and returned to do some energy work because it was very surprising. I've only been in Britain, and when we started the energy work, it just didn't seem to have so much violence on it as the American. It may be because I wasn't used to the energy or something. There was some dreadful energy in Georgia. I forget what it was called. Helen, is it Helen? I think that was the religious based energy, They're difficult things to talk about. These people love these places, and I'm talking about the places they love, and do you know what I mean? But trapped energy is trapped energy, and you have to release it, whether it's from a cancer tumor or a magnetic field of the Earth. That's it. So yes, the answer is yes to that. Well, and trapped souls occur as well.
Well, I appreciate your answer on that. I know it was a difficult question, painful.
Yeah, well, it takes me to places where I've come on this interview to be honest, not to hide things.
Sure.
So I have to be honest, and even though it hurts me because I think it undermines the hard work that I put in and the scientific method that I put into the research into the orbs. I tried to keep it all out of the book, because I just wanted it as a piece of science work. But I know that science is not going to change itself until it's ready anyway. Posthumously, the great scientist will be proved right. And I'm not suggesting I'm a great scientist. That's just how it works. So anyone who comes up with anything is not going to be recognized unless the controlling elite want it. If it fits their model, they can carry on the depravity and murder, death, kill, then they're fine, So as long as the theory fits their eugenics movement, they're fine.
Well, thank you, Paul. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And next up is Uranus rising.
Yeah.
Paul, in your book, you also have photos of prehistory rock art.
Yeah.
Showing how these may be ancient artistic impressions of orbs, energies used for healing and balance, and they're absolutely stunning. And they match your photos so closely.
Precisely.
Would you share how you arrived at that this understanding that that's what they were?
Well, it's going back to the work in the energy field. There were a lot of coincidence working on the ley lines, working on the standing stones, seeing the bars shooting out of the tips in that 50 sequential photograph.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that we were filming, a doctor of geology accompanied us for parts of the research period. I'm not stating that he believes. He wrote a quote on the back of the book. I don't know if you've seen it. You may have seen it.
Mm-hmm.
And my dog was watching. So my dog now is sat in the front of. We are filming in Pennine Burrows. It's a burial chamber. And my dog was sitting in front of the film shoot. John was holding the blanket up because there were nettles, and we use fishing tripods to put the black blanket up where we film against.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so the dog now is looking at something out of the shot and quite a way away because of the angle of her head. And she follows one of the bars that go across the blanket, go through John's back and out the other side.
Wow.
And she follows that. So when I recorded that, I what with the bars shooting out of the top, animals being able to see it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a thing called cryptochrome in animals' eyes, which are magnetically sensitive. Have I spoken about this earlier on?
No.
There's a cryptochrome which is magnetically sensitive, so it responds to magnetism. And they're publishing papers on bird's eyes saying that if they are that magnetically sensitive, then they can see magnetic energy fields, and that's how they navigate. And the thing is called cryptochromes. So animals and their night vision are probably the increased level of cryptochromes.
That's fascinating. Wow.
So it all fits. To me, it all fits together. But we're slowly catching up to the ancients, unfortunately.
Yeah, but
so,
how did you connect the dots there?
well, the thing is that these angles at the bases of the stones, the notches, the cutouts, follow the energy fields. I couldn't make that. They must have seen it.
Yeah.
They must have seen that. And so that was the conclusion. Firstly, the bars fire out. Secondly, the bars come into your wrists and your arms. They correspond with the Otzi tattoos. My dog sees it. And so all of a sudden, I'm going down the line. I go, right, well, it's in the rock art. I find it. The hook web orb, or one of the classifications called hook web orb, is perfectly identical. The orbs in 3 bars, in threes in the tubes, they're perfectly identical. And yet the archaeologists won't accept it. I've written to them. I've offered to assist some of their master's students on a shaman's view of the rock art. Just giving out all this information for nothing. And of course, I've been declined. I think the Scandinavian rock art, the way that they preserve the rock art by painting it with vegetable dye.
Yeah.
So they paint it. You've seen the ones with all the white dots on it. They paint it, and this takes them hours and hours of work. They paint it with a vegetable dye, and they paint all the details. They shine light on it, so they got the detail right, and then they photograph it, clean it off. It's obviously degradable. And some of the sites they'll dig them up, uncover the soil, photograph them, and then bury them. So their work is essential. It's essential for our knowing of what is going on. Because there's stuff in rock art I don't understand.
Yeah.
I mean, the Orbs wave, I understand, but there's, the spirals we understand because we can feel them with our hands. Do you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
and anyone who's thinking this is our history, this is so important that it's preserved. Anyone thinking
Absolutely.
of funding any money to any science, because if we cannot, all our history's been killed. Everything's been
Yes.
killed off. Recently, Britain and America invaded Iraq. And they went and did exactly what the Spanish did to the Mayan records, which is they took went into the museums. We're supposed to be liberating them and getting them on our side because of the tyrants, right? So they go into the museums. The Mayans, I got a little quote here from the Mayans, and see if I can just read it because it's how they were more hurt about the burning of their. Perhaps I didn't print it. No, I didn't. One of the authors. This is a quote now. One of the authors of the destruction was Friar Diego de Landa, 1524 to 1579. The Bishop of Yucatan. Later in his life, he said, "We found a number of books in these characters. They contained nothing. It was not seen as superstition, lies of the devil." Now, it didn't fit their the Christian, the Catholic Church's view, the Spanish Catholic view of their creation. We burned them all, which they, the Maya, regretted to an amazing degree, and it caused them much affliction. So that's his report on it. And so we want to liberate Iraq. We want to return the people, back to their culture because, they were under a tyrant, and we nick all their stuff and we haven't learned anything from it.
Yeah.
We take away their Sumerian culture. They hide truth. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Oh, yes. And it's interesting, too, that the museums were the first places they went to and started destroying.
Right. And they've ended. So some researchers, I haven't got the evidence. I can't give you the evidence of who's bought what, but there are some researchers who have stated that they've ended on the antiquities market of the Americas. I don't know. I can't say that I've met anyone who's bought them, but we know that Pope Gregory rebalanced the Mayan calendar. So what documents was he using? Did all the documents get burned? What went to the Vatican? What went to the current Americas? We've learned nothing.
Yeah. Well, if Cliff is right.
Sorry?
If Cliff is right, soon those documents will be liberated from the Vatican.
Well, and so this rock art now, right? So we go back to the rock art. We have to preserve it. So if anyone's got £5 or donate it to the Scandinavian Rock Art Society. I'm not, because that is my past.
Yeah.
And
it's all. That's all of our past, though.
It's all of our. Oh. It is the stuff that we're missing that makes us psychotic.
Brilliantly put. Brilliantly put. Yes. Wow. And then in your book, you also said in the late Stone Age and early Bronze Age that the Earth's declining magnetic field resulted in the separation from the knowledge of this creative energy, the ancients called gods. As the Earth's magnetic field starts to increase, the unveiling of the orbs will take place. They will become illuminated by charge alone, as the Canadian scientist Hutchinson of the Hutchinson effect has created in his labs. Would you say some more about this and what you envision taking place as we experience increased solar activity and perhaps also increased energies from space?
Right. Okay. A number of years ago, I wrote to Hutchinson, the Canadian scientist, and what was happening was that he was using Tesla coils out of decommissioned battleships, and in one of the reports on YouTube or whatever, I saw him talking about these magnetic mists and balls and spheres that he was creating. So it matched up with the magnetic field slowing the orbs down, illuminating it. So it was one of the things that I was looking at, and I came across this effect. So that was why I was interested in him. I sent him a load of pictures of orbs and said to him, "Have you got any?" In the email, right? I sent a picture of. Have you got any photographs of these from your lab work? You know. Because you're using these high magnetic fields. And he sent back the email saying, "Wow, those pictures are cool." And that was about it. And I thought, okay, that's yeah. So these magnetic fields. So as you get close to the Van Allen belts, you know, you'll see these orbs. One of the Voyager reports was put up on the internet. On BBC or one of them saying that the shuttle had gone up very, very close to the Van Allen belts, and the astronauts had seen the spheres passing through the sides of the spacecraft. Even with their eyes closed, they could see these spheres, and that was pulled off the internet pretty damn quickly.
Wow.
When I was writing the book, that occurred, and of course I was looking at space because I knew that would happen. And so, if you get closer to magnetic fields, let's say the tether event, you've seen the tether event in space, have you?
Yes.
So you've got the orbs that are swimming like an aquarium type of. So in the magnetic fields, because they're closer, they move closer to the energetic fields off the surface of the Earth. And there's a researcher called Jeffrey Stray who talks about Earth chi and heaven chi descending, so the heavens descend into the Earth. So we've got the magnetic field dropping from the heavens, the magnetic field rising from the Earth, touching each other. That reformation of those two magnetic fields illuminate the whole process. So it's just a quicker rotation to the Earth. Magnetic fields intensifying, heaven chi dropping, earth chi rising, but people have misunderstood this because they say, "Oh, it's the gods are descending."
No.
So they've got these gods in spaceships coming down instead of a magnetic field.
Yes.
You know, so that there is a problem with it, and you can understand why they do. But if they did this research and they came on this journey, they would see it eventually.
Wow.
There's also a video by Tesla. Now that's interesting because he's got. I think he was working for Westinghouse at the time. It's an old video, and to the untrained eye, it's old film, so it's breaking up and it's going black and whatever. But there's the story of Tesla, I think it is, and they got the Tesla and rows of Tesla coils, I suppose. Anyway, you can see the bars firing from the floor because I've watched so many of them, right? So because I've watched so many of them, and they're moving much slower than the ones outdoors because you have to slow them down to a 30-second, and they have this distinct movement, you know, and I'm pretty sure I've never downloaded it and I've never slowed. It needs to be slowed one more time so that I can have a look at it properly. But I would swear that they are the same bars that I'm looking at, and they're caused by the increased magnetic field. So there's a lot of evidence to what I'm suggesting is there. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. Oh, that's amazing. Wow. Thank you. We have a lot to look forward to, I think.
Yeah, but then simply, you know the Kachinas take their masks off. You know the Hopi talk about the Kachinas taking their
Yes.
masks off. But the one thing that's very important with that statement, so the Kachinas are the Orbs to me. The one thing that's very important to that statement is even to the uninitiated, to everybody, everybody will see it. It's not, everyone will see this. And so, are we at this point? Do we think that I was predicting that the Earth's rotation is going to increase. It slowly is. I was predicting a leap second is going to go into a negative, into a negative for the first time since leap seconds were invented.
Yeah.
Now we need to look at these signatures to say that this evidence is now happening. Do you know what I mean? And we had a few seconds from the number of earthquakes that have been knocked off the rotational, increased the speed. Sorry, increased the speed. So so it's interesting.
Lovely.
It's interesting.
Yes, very, very interesting. Well, thank you very much for that, Paul. And I have a surprise. Neil has been able to join us now, so I'd like to introduce him and hand it over to him.
Yeah.
Hi, Paul.
Hi, Neil. How are you?
My apologies for being late to everything, but traffic being what it was and various circumstances. Sorry, Paul. Thank you for allowing me to be here. It's a pleasure to meet you, sir.
Yeah.
From forum member Jules. Paul, there have been a lot of story of orbs near crop circles in history. Alex Putney even relates a story where an orb downed grasses that lay in closely twisted swirls and discolored plants, possibly due to microwave energy from the orbs. What do you think of this, and have you seen or has your research found whether orbs have created down crops or grass formations?
It's not anything that we've been drawn to by the research. I know that some crop circles are not real. I know that some crop circles are real. I know people who've been for years to the crop circle symposium in Glastonbury. And I've spoken to a number of those people, and I asked them what they felt of the energy inside those circles, and many of them have said that it gives them headaches and makes them sick. So it is a real phenomenon, but if it's the magnetic field, you would expect orbs to be there. So I wouldn't. If it's an electromagnetic or microwave or energetic outpouring from the Earth, then you would expect the orbs to be there.
So what you're saying is, in your experience, the orbs do not leave ill effects around people.
The orbs. Can you repeat that again, please?
Well, you were relating to the fact that some of the crop circles are not, created by other entities. In other words, the ones that the circles are created that give people headaches, leave them in feeling less than comfortable that way.
Yeah. There's one lady who used to do some of our administration who's been for about 20, probably 20 years when they joined, about 20 years going to, or 10, 20 years. And she said she gets a number of crop circles because they do tours of them. She's actually been into these circles, and a number of them actually will start migraines off.
Okay.
I haven't had that first-hand experience of it, but I know that we could trust her account of it. Right. Does it mean that the energy was in conflict with her energy? I don't know, but I haven't really studied crop circles I know that some of them are made by people in Britain, and I know that some of them aren't. And I think the ones that aren't are fascinating, but I've never gone down that route. I've been trying to. It's too much work to be focused on how all the Orb wave fits into the creation, to get diverted with what the field or the energetic field is doing in the crop circle case. The geometry of it looks like the fractal geometry of the universe.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
So
yes,
the field, I could douse the energy fields and ley lines to see if they actually fit into an Earth field, or whether they're just another field on top of the Earth field. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I
It'd
do.
be
I totally
interesting.
know what you mean. Yes.
So if you've got a ley line coming from Cardiff running through the centre of that crop circle, whether it breaks up, or whether because parts of the field switch on and off, and they vibrate on and off. So it probably doesn't, but then it would be good to test it out, test the idea out for any dowsers who are listening anyway, who get to visit these crop circles.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
My next question is from forum member Len. Now, she states that mysterious lights have baffled observers on Brown Mountain in Burke County, North Carolina for centuries. The strange lights are often described as white, red, or yellow balls of light. They reportedly move around and remain stationary. Sometimes they are said to look like misty spears or produce a sizzling sound. Close encounters with the lights have been said to cause dizziness, as was described in a 1962 report in the Charlotte Observer. In 1913, W.J. Humphreys of the U.S. Weather Bureau investigated and compared them to a similar phenomenon in the Andes Mountains of South America. Since then, orbs have been noticed across the globe. Have you run across instances where orbs caused physical sensations like dizziness or made sizzling sounds?
The charge on the hands, when an orb is attached, delivering its energy to the back of a hand, you get a layer of charge over your hand. So they do carry charge, and the dizziness or feelings of wanting to go and sit on the floor. Definitely, we've had those kind of experiences, particularly by the megalithic circles. There was one event. Now, whether this is linked to an orb or not, I can't say. But I was actually physically picked up and thrown to the centre of a stone circle, and that was probably about 8 foot. And it was only because my feet hit the floor that I didn't smash my teeth in. My feet hit the floor first and flicked me upright because I was going straight for a stone. So there are other people. When we walk people around the megaliths, they'll equally feel this push, sensation, charge. I can't say that all of it is coming from the orbs, but I know of reports of people talking about the orbs sizzling, and that is their charge. But I haven't come personally across the sound of an orb, a sizzling sound. No, I haven't. But the other things I have definitely, yeah.
How, in your own experience, have you interacted and managed to control your interactions with the orbs? Or can you?
It's more like being like a tree. You just gotta let all your free will go and everything, and just be like a tree. Thy will be done, kind of thing. That, and then the connection occurs. I'll tell you a quick story about them. A man in the woods. So I walk my dogs in in the woods, and I bumped into a man who studied Hawkins' Brief History of Time, and when I was talking to him about some of the research that I've been doing and how you could explain with a different model of the universe, the old Barb wave theory, and how it fitted in. And I was taking photographs of my hand glowing. So he said, and then I would move away from an energy field. So you'd have like an orb attached around your hand, or orbs close to the hand, just about to attach, right? So and he's like pretty freaked out now, but he actually has a good connection to nature. He's constantly walking in nature. He's constantly got his Makita. I think he's got a Makita dog, and he's constantly. Sorry.
So he's grounded.
Yeah, he is. And he would walk to the top of the garth where the burial mounds are, which are just at the back of my house. My house, I look onto the Garth Mountain where they filmed that Welshman went up a mountain and came back down a hill or something. Anyway, the mounds that are on there are actually Bronze Age burial mounds. They haven't been excavated, and the triangulation point is on the top of that. But he constantly is walking up there. So what I said to him is, I said, stand here now. There's a little spot just outside the car park where if you stand, your hand will glow. Right? So with a sphere, and orbs will attach to it because you're connected to the ley line or whatever. So now I moved him around a bit. He said, pulling my leg or whatever. He was very, very doubtful. And until I moved him into a position, and obviously the field was then on. He made the connection with his feet. The charge came through his hand. The ball of energy was glowing with the red energy, which we first came across in the megalithic Arthur's stone, wasn't it? The first time we came across this years and years ago. And so he was blown away by it. So it's that connection. This man didn't believe that he could, but he could. And I could train that man to use energy, and but so not a lot of people.
Does that particular interaction only happen on that particular mountain that has not been excavated, or does it happen elsewhere?
No, this was in the car. This was in the car park to a forestry commission woods. Wow. I mean, it could be in Walmart. It probably wouldn't be in Walmart. It probably wouldn't be in Walmart, but because of the amount of energy that's been dropped by the shoppers. Do you know what I mean?
It'd be kind of cool if it did happen in Walmart.
Yeah, and the shining ones, right? You just imagine your Walmart greeter now, right? And he's one of the shining, standing on a ley line, glowing. I mean, it'd be wonderful promotion for them. Their sales would go up. They'd be selling those, and in the recession, they'll sell loads, wouldn't they? So, yeah. So no, it's because I can find them, I can take people to them, and generally pain stops us from connecting to these energy fields. So it's unfortunate that the majority of people, in one way or another, well, maybe not the majority, but a number of people won't be able to feel these effects until they've worked through their forgiveness.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I do. You left me with a very interesting image to contemplate tonight. People having orb experiences in Walmart. It's absolutely hilarious. And I do appreciate your work. I know very, very little about it, and I do think you're on the cutting edge of something historic and rediscovering what you're rediscovering. In the meantime, I'll pass it on. Thank you very much, Paul.
Yeah. Can I say thank you for those words? It's been a very lonely and isolating path.
You're not isolated anymore, my friend.
Well, it has felt like that for many, many years.
You're not isolated anymore.
That's right. You take 20 years of it, and it does be out of you, the light out of you as well.
Okay. Thank you again.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I hope this helps bring your light back, shining beautifully. I would like to reintroduce Peace for Gaia. She has the last question for you.
Right.
Hi, Paul. I have a question from forum member Lenny. She asks, remote viewer Ed James stated in 2004 that orbs were not related to ghosts, but rather an alien life form that has continued telepresence on Earth. James explains that an insect race at a great distance from us uses a kind of, quote, psychoenergetic technology to explore places in the universe. They formed something like an astral body, which is capable of bypassing space-time, and that some orbs captured in photos are evidence of this manifestation. Paul, could you please comment on these remarks? The orbs are so widespread that if James is correct, then maybe we've already had an alien invasion.
Yeah, I hold a totally different outlook to that. So it's I may be wrong, but my research doesn't take me to that position in any way.
Okay. I guess that answers that.
Yeah, let me tell you, I can be wrong, and I've been wrong on many things in my life.
Well, it's a very limiting view, and
yeah.
you have to wonder about an agenda with such a view being put forth.
Well, I know that orbs part the orb process is part of the placebo process. I know that it attaches to damaged parts of the body. I've got enough evidence for that. I know that the orbs will attach to the back of the hand. I don't see that aliens would be doing that.
Yeah.
Well, unless that's the way they work, I don't know. I'm not too keen. I know that there's consciousness, and I know that there's life throughout the universe.
Yeah.
The statistics suggest it, but I think that the Hollywood Illuminati. What you have to do is you have to look what comes out of Hollywood. Well, that's what they want you to believe, and whatever comes out of Hollywood, is part of our brainwashing. So it's a good way just to say anything you're told by. I know it's not the right way to look at things, but anything you're told by your government, your priest, your vicar. Do you know what I mean? You can basically say, well, we'll think the opposite, and that's a good start. I don't mean to be controversial, but and so the alien invasion is a thing I find particularly distasteful.
I agree with you. Thank you, Paul.
Paul, thank you so much for sharing your very generous time with us.
Yeah.
For this conversation that we've been sharing, for the experience and all your insights. It's been wonderful. At the end of your book, Orbs, Energy, and Myths, The Secret of the Ancients, you wrote, the place where John Muir talked of is where I believe I cracked the code of the creation. We never needed to look beyond what is present on our earth, for everything reflects the creation, including mankind. We just left the path for a short time. We have now begun to rejoin the path, especially thanks to people like you. On behalf of Fox, Time Monk Radio, and all the members of the WebBot Forum, we thank you, dear friend. In our tradition of loving and pie making, may you and yours have many luscious pies to come. And finally, in closing, I would like to read a little something written by Celtic mystic George William Russell. So the lover of earth obtains his reward, and little by little the veil is lifted of an inexhaustible beauty and majesty. It may be he will be tranced in some spiritual communion, or will find his being overflowing into the being of the elements, or become aware that they are breathing their life into his own. Or earth may become on an instant all fairy to him, and earth and air resound with music of its invisible people. Or the trees and rocks may waver before his eyes and become transparent, revealing what creatures were hidden from him by the curtain, and he will know, as the ancients did, of Dryad and Hamadryad, of genii of wood and mountain. Or earth may suddenly blaze about him with supernatural light in some lonely spot amid the hills, and he will find he stands as the prophet in a place that is holy ground, and he may breathe the intoxicating exhaltations as did the Sibyls of old. Or his love may hurry him away in a dream to share in deeper mysteries, and he may see the palace chambers of nature where the wise ones dwell in secret, looking out over the nations, breathing power into this man's heart or that man's brain, on any who appear to their vision to wear the color of truth. We've been so touched by you, Paul. Thank you.
Yeah, I forgot that I hadn't read the book for a long time, and John Muir's work was exceptional, and it reminds me that I gotta get into it and read it. It's very poignant because my father's name was John Muir, and he was taken away from me when, as I quote in the book, before I was ready to let him go. So, as the dedication says, So, yes, it touched a point. I'd like to thank everyone. I think a great group of people, and keep on doing this good work, And that isn't my work. It's just keep on being the intelligent people, asking the intelligent questions, because the way that the WebBot forum works is essential, because we're asking the questions that ordinary people want to know. Not your big talk show host who has whatever agenda. So I thank you very much.
And I thank you from the bottom of my heart. I'm sure we've all been touched. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Paul.
Oh, thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Bless you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah.
Thanks again, Paul.